So I have 15 minutes to tell you how the brain works, all right? And how you can see differently, because everyone hears about trying to see differently, right? And innovation, there are two sides to innovation. You have efficiency and you have creativity, and everything is focused on efficiency. So today I'm going to focus on creativity, and underlying creativity is perception, right? Perception underpins everything it is to be human, not just what we see, but what we know, what we believe, the people we fall in love with, the clothes we wear, everything begins with perception. So to understand a perception is to really understand what it is to be human. And I have one aim in the next 15 minutes, which is I want you to know less at the end than you think you know now, all right? And I always succeed, right? Because nothing interesting begins with knowing. It begins with not knowing. And I want you to not know at the deepest level, all right? So how many of you, when you woke up this morning, thought you saw the world as it really is? One. What are the rest of you seeing? How did you get here? Did you follow him? Right? If you're not seeing the world as it really is, what are you seeing? I think you all think you see the world as the way it is. How many of you believe in illusions, that illusions exist? Yes? If you believe in illusions, then the definition of illusion is to see the world differently from the way it really is. So if you believe in illusions, you think you see the world accurately most of the time, it's just that sometimes you get it wrong, right? So let's see how good you are at seeing the world accurately, right? Light intensity, it doesn't get any easier than that. Even jellyfish see light intensity and they don't even have a brain. So surely people at Unbound can see the world of light accurately. And if that's true, then things that are the same should always look the same. And these two dots are the same, and they look the same, agreed? But what happens if we don't change those dots, we just change what surrounds them? Do they still look the same? No? The one on the left should look lighter than the one on the right, yes? If not, see me later, right? This is the most basic illusion that your brain sees, and we don't understand how it works. But what it demonstrates is at the most fundamental level, context is everything. Your brain did not evolve to see absolutes. It evolved to find relationships. And this is true at the most basic level. But to understand why context is everything is to understand what it is to be human. And that's what we're going to touch on. And we're going to touch on the role of technology in exactly this process. And instead of telling you, I want to show you. So I want you to hold up your finger to me. This is why context is important. Hold up your finger and line it up to me. Okay? And I want you to move it towards you and away to you until your finger and I are the same size. Okay? Line it up to me. Okay, do you have that? You have it? Yes? Okay, we're not the same size. Right? But as far as your brain is concerned, the only information your brain gets from the visual world comes from your eyes. And at that point, your finger and I were the same size. Right? So this makes a fundamental point about your brain, which is that data is meaningless. All data is pointless. How many of you working on big data? Right? Data is pointless, which makes you essential. Because data at the most basic level of what your brain is doing could literally mean anything. It could be something large and far away or small and up close, something loud and far away or quiet and up close. And your brain has no way of knowing from the data itself. It doesn't come with instructions. So your brain has to use something else to see usefully. And what is the other piece of data your brain has access to? What else does it have access to? History, right? The functional structure of your brain is literally a physical manifestation of your past interactions with the world. Your brain did not evolve to make meaning by passively receiving content. Your brain makes meaning by physically engaging with the world, right? So when you open your eyes, how does your brain see? It sees by continually redefining your normality. Your brain evolved to evolve. It's adapted to adapt. And I'll give you a quick example of how quickly your brain can adapt. I want you to first notice that these two desert scenes are the same. One is just a flipping of the other. I want you to stare at the dot between the red and the green, okay? Don't look anywhere else. We're going to do it for about 30 seconds. Just stare at the dot between the red and the green. And while you're doing this, I'm going to tell you what's happening inside your head. Your brain is learning. It's learning that the left side of its visual field is under green light and the right side is under red light. That's becoming its new normal, which means everything you see after this will be a function of that normality. You're also getting very sleepy, right? Keep looking. Don't look anywhere else. When I tell you to, I'm going to ask you to look at the dot between the desert scenes, but not yet. This is a killer for a 15-minute talk. Okay, ready? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Look there. Do they still look the same? The one on the left should look reddish, the one on the right should look greenish, yes? Except for 7% of the men who are colorblind. You probably didn't know that. You confuse red and green, there you go. Okay? And now as you look around, your brain is again redefining normality. And we're just talking about color. So imagine what's true in other aspects of your brain. So what your brain evolved to see is not the world. We're forever separate from the world. Nor does it see data, because data is pointless in of itself. It doesn't tell you what to do. Your brain evolved to see a meaning that was useful to see in the past. And what was once useful may no longer be useful, which is why your brain evolved to adapt and continually redefine normality. So what we see, what we experience, is literally the history of what we perceived before. And I'm going to give you an example of that just here. I'm going to give you a new history, and as a consequence, you're going to hear something that you've never heard before, and you're never going to hear it anything differently from what you're just going to hear. So first, notice that you don't hear anything interesting in this sound stream. Come a bit louder. Agreed? Don't hear anything interesting. Try reading along. Louder. Can you hear it? Yes? Are you getting better at hearing it? Yes? Notice you're getting better at hearing something that doesn't actually exist. You're becoming delusional. Right? You're hearing the history of what you heard before based on my suggestion. And that's everything that we do. So, what is that sound? It's this played backwards. Another one bites the dust. Another one bites the dust. Ow! And what's more, what does history give you? It gives you your biases and assumptions. Every time you open your eyes, open your ears, you touch through your bias and assumptions. Not sometimes, it's all the time. And these assumptions keep us alive. Every time I take a step, I have hundreds of assumptions that the floor is not going to give away, my legs aren't going to give away, right? But they also constrain what we can experience. What's more, they don't just stay in our heads, they get projected out into the world, right? So this screen is not blue. The color blue couldn't be closer to you. It's literally inside your head, projected outward, right? If a tree falls in the woods and no one's there to hear it, does it make a sound? No. It creates energy. The tree exists, but the sound is a construct of your brain. So too is the blue. You're literally projecting your assumptions onto the world. And this is true for more complex perceptions. So here we have two triangles in a circle. They don't mean anything until I put them into motion. And now you can project a meaning onto them. You hate one of the triangles, right? You're feeling bad for the other one. You're worried for the circle. This is like a horror film. This is Halloween. And we're going to stop it there, and you're all wondering, what happens to the circle? None of which exists, right? It's all a construct of your brain. And what's true for color and form or more complex perceptions is also true for other people. While we can measure their what and their where, we can never measure their why. In the same way we have no access to a surface, we have no access to another person's head. Every perception of another person, every personality you perceive is literally inside you projected outwards. It can't be anything else, right? Every personality is yours projected onto another person. You project the meaning onto them based on your history of experience, based on your biases, your assumptions. And when you connect with someone, it's because your projected meaning of them happens to coincide with their projected meaning of themselves. Everything I'm saying to you right now is literally meaningless. You're the one constructing the meaning from it. Now here's an example, a more playful example. Now, in Britain, normally I have to explain this game, but here we have, right, the center and the quarterback are going to change their behavior, and their meaning is going to change according to the defense. See what happens. Right? We can do that once. Which means when it comes to perception, which underpins everything it is to be human, we are just like this frog. And I don't mean we're metaphorically like this frog. We are literally like this frog. This is virtual reality for a frog. Right? It's getting information and generating behavior that was useful in the past. And doing quite well. We are so like that frog in so many ways, right? So if everything you're doing is a reflex grounded in your history, and not just your history, by the way, the history of your family, the history of your culture, your evolutionary history. In fact, most of your life happened without you even there. How is it possible to ever see differently? Well, the answer is quite basic. Question your assumptions. Because if your assumptions, your biases constrain the next most likely possible, because your brain never makes big jumps, it only steps to the next most likely possible, then if you change your assumptions, you'll change your perceptions by questioning what you think to be true already. Right? And I'm going to show you a fundamental example just in motion. Here we have a wireframe diamond, and you come into the world with the assumption that you look down onto that surface. So when I spin it, you see it spinning from left to right. I want you to question that assumption that you're looking down onto it. I want you to imagine that you're looking up at that central plane. Sometimes it helps to blur your eyes, blink, and it will go suddenly in the opposite direction. So blur your eyes, blink, try to imagine you're looking out of it. How many can get it to flip? Yeah, quite a few. And every time you blink, it'll go in the opposite direction. Right? And we're just talking about motion. Imagine what's possible in other aspects of your perceptual life. Quick question, which direction is it actually rotating? How many people say to the left? How many people say to the right? How many say, I don't care? Right? What if I tell you there's no motion on the screen at all? Nothing's moving. Would you believe me? Nothing is moving. Those lines are not moving. It's a construct of your brain. You're looking at an animation. An animation is a series of still images that are slightly different from each other. You're seeing the meaning of the change, not the change. And then flipping it from one direction to the other depending on how you think about it. Right? So one of the fundamental problems with seeing differently is that not only do we think we have an objective view of the world, but once you accept that you have assumptions, we often don't know what they are. Here's an example.
So there's nothing Barack Obama could do to prove that he was born here?
If there was maybe witnesses that were attendants at his birth.
Like his mother? Would you listen to his mother?
No. She has motivation to lie.
So you don't trust Donald Trump's birth certificate either?
Yeah, because he's been here forever.
Well, how do you know? But what's your proof?
Well, his parents and...
But no, but they're biased. I'm talking about like people who could be in the room.
Why would they be biased?
Well, like, I'm just using your logic against you.
Right? Not knowing our assumptions has serious consequences, right? And we laugh, but we are no different. You go to Britain and you still have a hot tap on the left and a cold tap on the right. Why? Because historically, you had hot water in a big bathtub in the loft, so you get mouse crap in there and dust. So it was dangerous to drink hot water from the hot water taps, so they separated them. But we now have sealed tanks, and yet we still have the taps this way, right? So hence the power of diversity, because the best person to reveal your own biases to you is usually not you. It's usually someone else, usually from a different background, right? And this then comes into the role of tech. So there are two aspects to tech, two qualities to tech that I want to suggest. The first one is useful tech. The other one is transformational tech. What is useful tech? Useful tech simplifies, makes the world easier for us. It gives us answers. It decreases uncertainty. An example is Uber. Uber's successful not because they enable us to get a taxi earlier or faster. It's because they tell you when the taxi is going to arrive, right? And that decreases stress. AI helps you come up with answers, right? And this is really important because your brain hates not knowing. Because to not know was to die during evolution, which is why we love closure. And here's an example of the power of closure in the context of music. We ramp up to uncertainty, and then the music drops. Watch what happens to their body when the music drops. Right? Your brain loves closure, and not just our brains. Look at this. Right? But then we have transformational tech, and I'll finish on transformational tech, okay? What is transformational tech? It enables you to see what you couldn't see before. It makes the invisible visible. It complexifies. It increases your biases, increases your assumptions by asking questions. And we know from complex systems theory, the most successful solutions exist in a complex search space, not in a simple search space. So think of technologies that make the invisible visible, like the sail of a boat, that enabled us to see cultures that we could never see before, landscapes that we could never see before, right? Or telescopes, microscopes, right? They complexify our experience. They enable us to ask questions that we never thought to ask before. They don't give us answers, they give us questions. And that's what we try to do in my lab of Misfits. Right? Where we create technologies that actually help us to ask questions, not come up with solutions. It helps us create doubt and celebrate doubt. And AR, augmented reality, is one example of that. Enables you to see something in the world that you could never see before. So who cares? Well, the first one is transformation begins with great questions, not with great problems. Right? With design thinking, they start with a problem and they come up with a solution. The solution might be great, but if the problem's no good, who cares? You want to find a great question, and finding great questions is hard. And this is what happens when you ask a great question, right? You add a little bit of energy and the whole thing gives way, right? That's the power of a good question, right? And you're all wondering whether or not he survives, right? He does. And the process of design then, in science, is to then iterate to better questions, right? And finally, don't shift. If your aim is to go from A to B, the first step is to go from A to not A, to let go of your assumptions and biases, to let go of those meanings, to step into uncertainty, and then to complexify, not to shift. So don't shift, expand, and create the ecology that enables others to ask questions. So enter conflict not with certainty, not with an answer. Enter conflict with a question. Enter conflict with doubt. And only then do you have the possibility of learning. So thank you very much. I hope that was useful.